So our art as artists, our art is the expression of our soul, the very sense of our living. So when we are living, like how it works is when you come into the art market, it's different than you doing it alone on yourself and saying this is what is working for me.
All right, welcome to the Art Show. I am the Almighty Ahmahdi. I'm sitting here with the legendary Malik, Seneferu,
So,
artist, muralist, life coach. Um, you guys, gallery owner,
yeah, yeah.
uh, just all around art pioneer for
Wow.
the Bay Area and just Black people in general out here. So, or to start, I guess my first question is, for those who don't know you, just tell
Mhm.
us about yourself.
Okay, so I was born in San Francisco, California, 1971, April 7th. I am actually the only child of my mother and father, but I do have a lot of younger siblings. I have three younger siblings that I learned how to change diapers with. I have two brothers and a sister, and I have a group of other brothers that come from my father who I never met, who I just
Yeah.
recently made contact with. But out of that, I'm the eldest of them all, and so always being coming into a Baptist family. My grandmother cut hair on Third in Newcomb for 65 years, so all of my childhood life. I always desired to be around my grandmother because she ran her own business
Yeah,
right on Third and Newcomb,
that's what's up.
and so she had the space at the time when there was the notorious shootout with the police
Yeah,
in 1966 over a little brother by the name of Matthew Johnson. All of that kind of helped to be the foundation who would make Brother Malik
yeah,
today. So I was born as Herman Jerome Smith Jr., named after my father, who I had never
hmm,
met. And when I began growing up, about 14, 15 years old, I started, learning about, I really began reading about Malcolm X,
hmm.
because this idea of fighting back. And and at age 14, I joined the Nation of Islam
Okay,
in Mosque 26 here in Hunters Point.
yeah,
And I was working hard to get my ex. And I remember a brother telling me, like, brother, you don't really need to be reformed, brother, because you
yeah,
already got the knowledge of self. We're trying to get people who need the knowledge of self to get
yeah,
to this. You should push what you're doing to the community, and just help us do our work in that manner.
hmm,
And so I didn't understand it at first, but I definitely continued with that work. And to this day, I still do what I do. And I began actually teaching at the Mosque University. I taught art there with a group of kids, and I used to walk them down Third Street,
yeah.
and that's how people began calling me Brother Malik.
Okay, that's that's crazy.
Yeah.
So, just that whole thing. What was the city like as a child? Like being around
Mhm.
when the legendary shootout happened,
Mhm.
and just coming up when Third Street was,
Mhm.
you know,
The
primarily
heartbeat.
black, and yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and just and then being in the nation at
Yeah.
14,
Mhm.
15 years old. So
Yeah.
what was it just like as a child seeing the city, and what was the art like around you
Right. Right.
growing up?
Right. So the only art I really knew of in the city, growing up as a kid, and always played in the back of my mind, was a man by the name of well, it was a painting done called "The Fire Next Time,"
The fire next time?
and it was a painting done on what is known as the Jolie Gym.
Okay.
And this painting, I saw it actually in the act of the artist actually putting on
Yeah.
the building at age 5. That's my earliest memory of seeing someone do it and saying, I want to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was Dewey Crumpler, who I'm close, like he's like an uncle to me,
Yeah.
almost a father figure, like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, in terms of the arts. And so he was the first person in physical, tangible connect that I was able to make connect with.
Mm-hmm.
Later, I would meet many other artists. Actually, you know, at the age of 4, I was enrolled into an art program through my grandmother, and that was ran by a man known back then as Dr. Joseph Samuels,
Mm-hmm.
which now is known as Joe Sam, the late
Okay.
Joe Sam, who just recently passed away in June.
Wow. So you were in an art class with.
I was actually in a Head Start program that they did. It was like I think it was like Christmas in April or something like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I was a part of that. And then fast forward almost 20 years late, almost a little under 20 years later,
Yeah.
uh, the owner of Surfside Liquor would tell me about
Okay.
a man who comes. His name's Bob,
Yeah.
and he would tell me like, "There's this elderly gentleman that comes by here that I want to introduce you to." You know, he walks around with paint on his clothes like
Yeah.
you do. And I was like, "Oh, okay." I like, okay, okay, I'll see him. And every time you see him, like, you just missed him.
Yeah.
I was telling them about you. You're like, "Oh, okay, all right." So one day I walk in, and he just so happened to actually be standing there, and I knew because he had painted a
Mm-hmm.
picture of his own face in the he painted a picture of his own face on the back of his shirt, and I was like, "Oh, this must be him," you know.
Yeah.
So we make this contact and build, and like maybe 2 or 3 years later, I come in contact with another young man with another elder gentleman who actually knew me before I knew him, you know. And how he knew me is because he knew my nickname, and only knew at least 10 people that knew my actual nickname, which
Yeah.
was Tutu. So he was like,
You
"Hey,
said which is what?
Tutu."
2-2.
So
Okay.
he was like, "Hey, Tutu," and I'm like, I had to double take, like, I hadn't heard, only my grandmother and my mother and them would call
Yeah.
me that. So I'm like, my father is somebody, it was my attitude because I was still in search of him at then. And he was like, "No, I got somebody I want to introduce you to." We were here in the Hunters Point shipyard when that
Mm-hmm.
happened. And it was during the open studios.
Oh wow.
So I'll go up there. It was packed. It was like you couldn't even walk down the hall. It was packed. So he get all the way up to Joe Sam's studio on the second floor here down the
Mm-hmm.
hall. Get in, and I was like, "Oh, he's going to introduce me to Joe Sam," but I'm gonna let him do his thing.
Yeah.
I'm not knowing anything about this. He was like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to somebody," and he points at me like, "Oh, I know that knucklehead. I know him." He's like, "No, you don't know who this is." And he's like, "What do you mean? No, I know him. I know him. He's up
Yeah.
on the hill, the artist on the hill." Like, "Nah, man, this is Tutu." And they went because they talked about this
Yeah.
little kid Tutu
Mm-hmm.
and what he might be doing today.
Yeah.
So me and Joe Sam were reunited, and it was just this lock tight
That's crazy. So
connection.
it was like a real full circle moment for you. Literally
Yeah,
at that moment. You're at the
yeah,
shipyard, you're
yeah. I
meeting the
didn't
mentor,
exactly.
and you're like, you are where he was when he was teaching you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
that. Because I was working with you. I always work with youth,
Yeah.
so I was literally in that position. So yeah, that was a really big deal for me. So that's really my telling beginning of art. I started doing art exhibits in the projects
Yeah.
in Harbor Road, and I would do art exhibits out of my mother's house and throw birthday parties. I called them Solar Returns, and they would be exhibits of my artwork all throughout my mother's house.
That's you wanted some. You wanted some.
Yeah.
All right. So that kind of just the culture around the city, around your house.
Yeah.
It's the 60s, it's the 70s, it's the 80s. Hip hop
Well,
is
well,
here.
actually, it's the 70s because I
It's the
was born in
70s. Okay,
71. Yeah,
71. Okay, so
yeah,
it's the 70s.
yeah.
Hip hop hits.
Right.
What happens to the art? Graffiti
Yeah,
is like, where are you
man.
when hip hop is developing, and where is your art at when it is in the growing stages of just
Man, at this time, I was into strutting,
hmm
into robot strutting and
yeah.
stepping.
Okay, so you were you
So,
were you were
so
breaking.
this was before hip hop, before anybody knew anything over here about any hip hop,
hmm
right? So I was already actually dancing, and so how I was doing that was because I was a little kid, had a little afro, and
hmm
people, little kid, everybody say he looked like Michael Jackson, kind of thing like
yeah.
that. And they would want to see me dance. When I was living in Geneva Towers, they would ask me to dance. I was
Yeah.
like 2 and 3 years old, and I would be roboting
hmm
like Michael Jackson and
Yeah.
stuff. And that was my early beginning with the dancing, and always dancing to the break beat.
hmm
Like when they say, "All right, come on, Tutu,
Yeah.
get down, Tutu, get down." That was the thing. And when we were living in Geneva Towers, and so from that, we fast forward to 1976.
hmm
My auntie, I'm at my aunt's house. We're sleeping over at her house, and she plays Curtis Blow,
Okay.
and she plays, and then I listen to Curtis Blow, and next thing you know, we moved to East Palo Alto,
Yeah.
and I live in East Palo Alto at the time, going to Bellhaven Elementary School, second grade. That's where got into the second grade there. And no, I went to a couple of schools in second grade,
hmm
but one of them was Bellhaven. And I was there and heard Rapper's Delight,
Okay. Yeah.
and we would be jumping up and down on the bed rapping Rapper's Delight, and that was the thing. And
hmm
so everybody wanted to hear me sing Rapper's Delight because I knew most of the words
Yeah.
and Rapper's Delight. So I was always singing that, or like something would happen, like my sister or brother or some my
Yeah.
cousin would get in trouble, and I would say, "And the chicken tastes like wood," and they would get upset because like somebody gets smacked
That's
upside the head for not doing what they supposed to do, and I would say, "And the chicken tastes like wood." So that was my
that's funny.
comedy relief using hip hop type of thing. But
Yeah.
then fast forward, hip hop, I actually began breakdancing. I actually began doing graffiti art. I've
hmm
had my first name I wrote was Herms. That was
That's
uh
hard.
yeah, Herms. And then started writing up the word Twix.
Yeah.
And that was the name I used to write was Twix. And then I wrote Safe. Actually, I wrote Safe, I wrote Twix, I wrote Laid. Those are all the
hmm
names I used to write up and
Yeah.
stuff. And I used to have my own little. I used to try to do my own burners and stuff inside on in a little paper bag because
Yeah.
I didn't even know what a sketchbook was back then, bro.
Yeah.
So
So materials were far.
far and few. I used
Yeah.
to steal paper, keep it 10,000. I used to steal paper from school,
Yeah.
bring it back home, and fold it up and try to make an art book.
Yeah. I think we all been.
That's what I would do. And I would fold the paper
Yeah.
and try to make my
hmm
own art book out of it. And I would teach art classes at home. We would play a school and I would teach art.
Okay. So that definitely leads me in right
Yeah.
into my next question was, how did you go about creating space as a
Mm.
young artist? Because you said you threw galleries in your mother's house, you're
Yeah.
teaching,
Yeah. Yeah.
at a young age. So how was it for you just creating the space as an artist
Hmm.
to be seen for yourself and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily for anybody else, even
Yeah.
though that was the
Right.
repercussion? But how did you go about that?
Well, the thing was that I knew my mother was well known around the neighborhood. And so whenever we had a place really to stay, she would always invite her friends over. And I was already, like I said, I already grew up performing. My mother would have me dancing. And what I realized a little later is that my mother was a dancer. She danced, I think it was Gwendolyn Brooks. I may have her name wrong, but she did Haitian dance classes here in Hunters Point, which was
Yeah.
known as at one time A&B Park.
A&B Park.
So it's some of us called it Aunt B.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
but it's
okay.
actually called A&B Park.
So wait, you said that's your auntie?
No, that's not my auntie.
Okay.
We called it
You called it
Aunt B
aunties.
Park.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
That's what we thought. I thought it was Aunt B.
Me too. I
Yeah,
I
So
literally
most
thought it
of
was
us
Aunt B.
thought it was Aunt B, but it was A&B Park.
A&B Park.
And it was Julia Middleton who was known as Aunt B.
I had no idea.
Because everybody thought it was they were calling it A&B Park, and we thought it was said that it was called Aunt B Park.
Yeah.
And it was Julia Middleton who was Aunt B. So she used to tell me, why don't you come over here and teach the kids some of that art? We got to get some art classes going. And who had a mural there in that park? Dewey Crumpler. Dewey Crumpler had the basketball where they was playing basketball right on the side of the thing. So it was like he was following me everywhere I was. I would see his work there. So it let me know that I was on my pathway.
Yeah. So you've actually taught at
A&B Park.
Really?
Yeah.
When they had the structure there.
Yes. When they had the biggest slide in the Bay Area.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I remember I just remember seeing the park, seeing it as a structure and everything.
Right.
And I always wondered what happened to it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's a whole nother documentary.
That is a whole nother documentary.
Yeah.
So other questions. So what are some of the common pitfalls that you went through while trying to develop your art?
Say that. I want to make sure I got the beginning part of it.
Just what are some common pitfalls for you when you were a new artist, just trying to find your way?
Oh, the first pitfall, I already go into that. My first pitfall was being poor. You know what I mean? Like not having no money, bro. For real, that was a pitfall for real. So with that being said, it was like, excuse me, being that pitfall was really in the sense of trying to find out, how I can make it in a city where you can see a beautiful car going by one neighborhood and a family struggling and surviving to just get butter and sugar, you know what I mean? In another neighborhood, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would, when I found myself down and out, I would hop on a 15. And I would just ride the 15 all the way to the end, go to the pier, or I jump on the 44, ride the 44 all the way to the end, and looked at the difference between the neighborhoods. You know what I mean? And so I got to know those neighborhoods. Like, I've never been here. I'm going to get off and walk around. You know what I mean? And that's what I would do. I was finally able to get a fast pass. And when I got the fast pass, it was no holds barred, because what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to ride the 2 Clement, the 3, everything. I'm going to ride all the buses around. I want to go somewhere.
Yeah.
I want to travel, but I can't afford to do it.
That's actually a really good one, because a lot of people actually don't leave the neighborhood. Because I grew up on like Eddy Street in Fillmore. The 31 take you all the way to the beach.
31 take you all Balboa.
And
that's right.
how many people have never jumped on that bus
and went
all the way to the end.
That's real. And you know what's so trippy about that is that I did that all the time, to the degree that when I started, when I would come back home, everybody would say, I want you to work with my kid.
Yeah.
I want you to teach him how to draw. I want you to teach him what you do, because you somehow figured something out. I want you to share that.
Yeah. And it was more of a mentality than it was
a job. It wasn't a job. Yeah, it was just me, being an older brother, really. That's really what it was,
Okay, so that kind of definitely leads me to my next question. Creativity, technique, and like skill. What do you think defines an artist? Is it like their capabilities, or is it just the mindset of how they create? Like, what do you think defines an artist?
It's primarily their relationship. It's their relationship to the practice.
Yeah.
How much related are they really to it? Are they really putting in the work, right? When we talk about making, we're talking about fine crafting, right? But you can't just start off doing fine crafting. You actually have to uh, practice, you know.
Yeah.
And what I found, a lot of my friends who even knew how to draw a little bit better than me, they would get mad and just throw it away and say they didn't want to do it anymore. And I would be talking to them like, bro, you really got to just keep, doing your thing, that
Yeah.
type of thing. And they would get upset and kind of just say, I ain't got no time. I'm not going to, make anything of myself doing it. And what I heard a lot of folks saying, okay, well, if you're going to be an artist, you definitely gonna have to find a job. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so, but the crazy thing was traveling all over San Francisco meant that I got a chance to go check out art galleries because the galleries were free.
Okay.
So I can walk in those galleries and not have to worry about paying to go do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would take my fast pass and go to all of the galleries all over the city, and I have my sketchbook with me. And I
Yeah.
went to all the art centers. I went to the Som Art Center, and there I met an artist by the name of Michael Rios.
Michael
I
Rios.
want you to remember him. And Mike Rios, he's still alive today. Mike Rios was working on a mural, and he, come to find out, he was working on a mural for Carlos Santana, for Carlos Santana's first Mexico tour.
Yeah. Okay.
And Mike Rios was working on that mural. And when I came in, I was just watching him, and I had my book, and he was like, "What's going on, youngster?" I was like, "Hey, all right,
Yeah.
what's going on?" He was like, "What's that you got in your hand?" I was like, "Oh, this is my sketchbook." It's like, "What? You an artist?" Like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I'm an artist." He looked at it. He was like, "Oh, okay, you good. Yeah, you want to work on the mural with me?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll work on it with you." I didn't know it was for Carlos Santana.
Yeah.
He was just like, "Yeah, Carlos, he's gonna be here in a minute." I didn't know.
This is Carlos.
I didn't know. And then when I saw his face, I was like, "Oh, I saw him. He was,
Yeah.
performing with the big, So
That's
I had the chance to work on that mural that traveled throughout Mexico
yeah.
with him, and he just let me get a couple of strokes in, but just to be up on the scaffold with him, it
Yeah.
was like before that I had the opportunity to work on a mural, and it was this community mural that was done for the Mount Zion Hospital.
Yeah.
And I did that when I was a youngster, just walking around the city, finding out all these projects happening. I go down to, and then another time I went down to North Beach, and I saw some artists working on the scaffold there, and I would just go up and watch them work, and I had my sketchbook in my
Yeah.
hand. And I remember Dennis Taniguchi, he was working on a mural in North Beach, and they were doing this huge painting of all of the children, all of the cultures of the city
Yeah.
as children on this one cable car. And this is like 1991, and this is like a year or two out of high school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I got to figure out how I can get hooked on. So he saw my sketchbook, and he was like, "Oh, you want to paint with us? Here, sign this paperwork. We're gonna get you paid." And that was the first time I got paid to actually work on a mural, and that mural stayed up for almost 20 years, and it had my birth name on it, Herman Smith.
Yeah.
So I was one of the artists that actually, and I was the artist responsible for painting the African American figures of the Black children on this, and I still have a picture of it. I have to find it at home, of uh, uh,
The cable
the
car?
cable
Yeah.
car, the children, all of the children cultures on this one cable car.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sprinkled throughout history all.
No, it's
Yeah,
real,
yeah.
man. I had the
You're sprinkled all
opportunity to
throughout the history.
come in contact with Jacob Lawrence when I was in high school. I spent like a whole week with Jacob Lawrence, not realizing who Jacob Lawrence was because I
Yeah.
was just a kid, just, trying to, wishing to have some better tennis shoes. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this kind of is a question. Art and value, like how do you go about making art valuable, or what do you think makes art valuable or worth collecting?
When we say value and worth, right?
Yeah.
Value and worth is all by hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by hearsay is that if people hear someone else say your name and art is connected to that, value then is then attached to who you are,
Mm-hmm.
right? If no one ever hears, no one ever says your name, right? It's like what we always say when we pour libations is that if they stop saying your name, you're truly dead. You see what I mean? But if people are saying your name and they're speaking up about your name, now there is some value because why? Memory.
Okay.
Memory and value, right, are kind of one and the same. If one can draw memory from you doing something, now that memory has to be attached to what? Skill, right? And high stature of makeability. And I just made that word up.
I like it.
But this ability to actually make things in a high crafting or rendered manner, meaning that you have skill to the point that they call it talent, right? And so growing up as a kid, everyone would call me that I was the talent in the neighborhood. Now, I ran into some other kids who were highly skilled. You know what
It's
I
always
mean?
crazy when the artist runs into an artist better than them.
Yeah,
It's
but
like,
I was in second grade and
mm-hmm.
I noticed artists who were really on their thing, but I realized like I had some Vietnamese friends and I had some Asian friends from other neighborhoods. Now, I didn't know that they had Saturday schools where they were being taught by master artists how to do all the tips and tricks on what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I would see these kids get hired by the teacher to draw Spider-Man without even tracing them, without even looking at them. They would just whip them up. And that was what really pushed me. Like,
Yeah.
oh, he just went up there. He threw the Wicked Witch of the West, like without even looking at nothing.
It's a sense
Like,
of competition. And
well, it was just like it let me know that I had to get on my stuff.
yeah.
It wasn't so much I'm gonna go beat him out. It's like, no, I'm gonna go meet with him, talk with him,
Yeah.
be friends with him. Like, yeah,
Self competition.
yeah, just like really
Like how
building up.
how can I be better? Because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
inspirational.
And I remember this dude, Thong Choi. I don't know if I'll ever meet him, but this young kid, Thong Choi, came to me and he showed me this one drawing he did of these cowboy western. He
Mm-hmm.
drew a cowboy western scene. But if you looked at it, it looked like a college school kid drew this.
Yeah.
But this is second grade. Like
Mm-hmm.
he had the rendering skill was off the chart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how you do this? Like, when I go home, they teach me at home. They teach me.
Yeah.
You don't have an art class at home, like, oh, bro, I don't have a pencil at home. You know what I mean? Like, barely even
Yeah.
got a piece of paper to get on. You know what I mean? Because I can't even use the bag because we cooking chicken with it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like that kind of thing was like lost to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to really climb through and work on my skill day and night because I wanted to see myself to be able to do that. You know what I mean? And so that was pretty much me growing up through the teenage years. Just once I got a hands and understood that there was a such thing as a sketchbook, I kept the sketchbook on me. And still to this day, I keep one on me.
You know what's so crazy? When I met you when I was
Yeah.
like 17.
Yeah.
When I was like 17, that's what you told me. You was
Yeah.
like, always keep a sketchbook. And
Yeah.
since then, I don't go nowhere without.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't go
See,
nowhere without one anymore.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, no, so I really do. I appreciate you for that one.
Absolutely.
That was definitely a gem throughout the
Yes.
years that I had,
Yeah.
that I still hold on to.
No, it's real. Yeah.
But yeah, so you working up your art, you
Hmm.
get good. Do you ever find difficulty pricing your work now that you're good? And even at a younger age, and even now, when you make a piece, do you step back and look at it, and do you kind of let it come to you, or what is your method or process like when pricing? Do you ever find difficulty pricing pieces?
I'm gonna take you back. I'm gonna try not to be long-winded, but it's hard because when I'm passionate, I get long-winded. But when I was a kid, I was always doing. People would ask me to draw a picture of their baby when they had a baby. Can you draw a picture of my baby? And I was doing stuff like that. So I remember doing this one drawing without even looking. I was just drawing on my head, and my mother's friend saw it. She looked at it, and she's like, "Oh, can I have this?" And I said, "Yes. Can you sign it for me?" I signed it for her and gave it to her. It was the first time I felt like I was given an autograph. So I gave it to her, and she gave me a hug, and her hand came through my hands, and it had some money in it. And it was, she could secretly gave me $80 for one drawing. Now I remember that drawing didn't take me an hour to do. And I thought about people talking about how much they get paid an hour to do things at their job. So I was like, man, I didn't even work an hour and I got $80 for this piece. Then value clicked in my head, because at this time I'm selling candy from door to door for this organization called Kids. That's how I first started when we lived at Pierce and Eddy. I lived at Turk and Eddy. I lived right on Turk and Eddy. Went to Golden Gate Elementary and finished up elementary school at Golden Gate.
Me too.
And from Golden Gate went to Ben Franklin, and from Ben Franklin transferred over to Viz Valley and graduated from Viz Valley and went to the School of the Arts. Because I was always drawing in class, Miss Swanee said, "I have a friend." This is my English teacher in junior high school at Viz Valley. She says, I know every time I come in this class, you're always drawing, and I while I love the fact you're drawing, I need you to do your work. Can you? I tell you what, I'm going to connect you, because you're going to be graduating. I want you to be able to go to this school for the arts where people actually do art. Would you want to do that? And I was like, yeah, I want to do it. And it's like, well, we got to get permission from your mom. And I begged my mother, like, Mom, she's going to send me. I really want to go to this right here. So it's like, well, I don't have no money. It's like, nah, they won't charge you. It's just, I can be in it,
Yeah.
So I get in there, and it's School of the Arts, and it's these kids that's performing at high level, creating art. And I get there, meet some friends, and they all kind of see me as a leader because they like the way I draw. And it let me know then, that there was some value to that, and people started paying me to do little drawings here and there. People at the beginning are going to place value on what you have.
Yeah.
However, when you're doing a job, if you're being commissioned to do something for someone, then you draw value on how much you want to get paid an hour to do such a thing. And it's not so much wanting, but it's how much is your work worth. Now, you can talk about how much I paid for the paint, how long it took for me to stretch this canvas, what I had to do, the days and nights that you got to think about that when we talk about value, there's really no value on your life, right? There's value, you value your life.
Yeah.
But there's no dollar amount that can say how much your life is worth.
It's like priceless.
So our art as artists, our art is the expression of our soul, the very sense of our living. So when we are living, like how it works is when you come into the art market, it's different than you doing it alone on yourself and saying, this is what it's worth to me, right? But when you come into a world where there's market, there's people, there's a whole, hierarchy on who gets what, you know what I mean? Like you're going to buy some shoes like that, and those shoes are cool because they are also Converse. They have, how you know is you have the label on them. You look inside, those are real Chuck Taylors, right? So we buy things. When you buy things, you buy them by name. Like why is the name? Because the name is very well synonymous with history.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about pricing your work, we got to be very careful of that, because a lot of times what we do is we play ourselves down because we're not Pierre Cardin, or we're not Gucci, or we're not, you see what I'm saying? We're not Fendi.
Yeah.
But you got to understand, they'll go get a Ziploc purse this small for $1,200, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't really put anything to it. It's actually a couple of folks in the sweatshop, and they just stamped their name on it and said, okay, give me 1,200.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So now a lot of it is a game. It's a lot of game behind it. But as artists, there's no game to what we do. It's real. It's breathing our soul, who we are. So the time you put into your work is extremely important, because when you're putting time every day of your life into that, now it goes into value. People start to know you for that. So like, for instance, when I sold my first art piece, it was $1,200. Okay, my first art piece. And why? Because at that time I was already put on the news, and I was already interviewed with someone by an elder gentleman who I didn't have locks at the time. His name was Dangerous George, and he came to my house and did an interview on his cable station called the Dangerous George Show. And they interviewed me right in my house on Harbor Road. I didn't even have any locks, but I had my first African garb on that day with a stuffy nose, couldn't taste nothing my mother was cooking. I was really kind of mad, you know what I mean? And I got interviewed, and everyone was saying, man, I saw your interview on Dangerous George Show.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So like, that gives you some notoriety. It's like your song being played on the radio, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know. So when we talk about value, it's really about how your name is being given to others, right? And when you practice, how do they see you? You know. So I have so many ways that I rebirth myself, and I constantly rebirth myself with the changing of time. So you might come in and see me painting this, but you might go out there and say, that's Malik too. Oh, that's his work too?
Yeah, no, when I seen the piece come in, I'm like, oh man, like, you gotta stay a chameleon in style sometimes.
But that's what I've always been, a chameleon, because San Francisco is a chameleon like that, especially when it comes to Black folks. It switches up on us, and we have to be prepared to survive. You know what I mean? And so I paint for my ancestors. So whatever my ancestors put on my heart and my mind, that's what I'm into doing.
I just was telling somebody this the other day. I'm like, the reason why I like to paint is because it's me, but it's not me. Like, you know, like, I got the idea, but I'm just the one that got to bring it here. Like, you know, like, I'm not necessarily the one who's like
the conduit.
You know, thinking of all these things. You know, like, some stuff just comes to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm the channel that it wants to be.
And that's what we're doing. We're channeling. Like, this is a channel. Like, there's no place that exists like this. This is something that was a gift that was given to me by my ancestors. And so this is my libations that I'm working on right now.
So it's like, it's given to you to give.
To give to the world.
To give to the people.
So how many eyes are on this then gives it value.
Okay. So that leads to my next question. How do artists go about giving back to their lineage, their community, their city? You know, how does an artist go about giving back, in your opinion?
Well, if an artist is not productive, they're not giving. And what do we mean by that? They're not giving visions. See, I wanted to be a muralist because I saw artists doing a mural. If the artist wasn't busy doing the mural, I wouldn't have saw the artist doing the mural. Maybe my thoughts would have been something else about art. You see what I mean? So an artist, a real true artist, is always giving. The artist is never not giving, right? Think about it. Artist is always creating something. Now, if that artist creates something and locks it in the closet, even, he's still giving something in the universal a role in the air. You know, the universal aura is being changed every time something is made by an artist. That's my philosophy.
Okay. Yeah, I do believe that, because it kind of just ties back into what we were saying. Ideas come to you to get out, right? And once you let them out, they're out. So it's like, I have this thing where, you know, if you sit on it too long, it'll go to somebody else.
Oh yeah, you know, that's an idea that comes to you, you know, and so that's why you must have your sketchbook.
Yeah, that's why you got to
pour it into your sketchbook to just get it out. You know what I mean? And then once you got it out, if nothing else, if it's but just to put it inside of your sketchbook, then that, you know, that's what it would be for. But really, you want to pour into that. And if it's something that keeps calling at you, then maybe it's a series of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like how you're going about that. All right. So Black art and Black homes, how do we get more of it? And how do we champion ourselves as artists?
Yeah. So champion ourselves, we must create to the utmost of our ability. That's number one. I mean, putting our all into a thing, and not with the attitude, well, I don't really have no time, I got to go do this other stuff. Well, then it doesn't have that much credence and value to you. Because first, you have to value it, right? Like what I'm doing, I can't get caught up in what other people think of me because I'm creating this particular type of work. I'm doing it because it came to me, and I'm pouring all my all into that until something else comes, you know. And if something else comes, I'm going to follow that comes to me. You see, that's my philosophy on how I've done everything in my life around art, you know. So there's my life, there's art, and then there's everything else. And my life is art, right? Because if you want to know me, then you know that I'm an artist, right? It's like this table's always going to be the table, right? So I'm always going to be that. You might see me for being a life coach, but as a life coach, I'm an artist. So any of the persons who are meeting with me, they know that I've come in touch with them by way of my art, right? Everything I have in my life is because of my art. My son is born out of my art. And I'll tell you this, I met his mother on the way going to teach an art class at a homeschool in Oakland. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I gave her a flyer letting her know I was going to Africa. And if she wanted to come and support, she can come to my art show. And I created my own flyer doing that. We did that here in Hunters Point. And I went to Africa in 1997. In 1999, my son was born after I came back from Africa. You see?
Amazing.
So if I was not teaching art classes in Oakland on 35th Avenue, right? If I wasn't doing that, I wouldn't have met her, and my son wouldn't have been born out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and the same thing, you know, most of the things that I've come in contact is because of my art.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's heavy.
That's how I got into martial arts. I got into martial arts by way of my art. I did an art exhibit, and at the time, Mayor Jordan at the time came down to the Fort Mason. I had my artwork down there, and I met a brother by the name of Terry Baruti, and I began training. And he was always telling me, "Man, I want you to come and connect with me and some brothers. We're doing martial arts." I'm like, you know what? I always wanted to get into martial arts.
How long have you been doing? Do you still practice?
Oh, I got my bit and bow in here right now, but you know, I'm just saying.
I've always been interested. I want to learn. I want to learn.
Yeah.
I want to learn.
But the major thing was me and Terry connected because of my art. And I was like maybe 24 years old by the time I would begin joining up with him to actually do capoeira. So through doing capoeira, I would meet my wife, who I have today. But it was through my art that I would begin doing capoeira and went traveling around doing this African art form and learning Congolese drumming from that, because I was into percussion and drumming myself as a kid, but I would finally learn African drumming through that. So everything has its layer from my art, though. It's the first drop in the pond was the art.
Okay. That's heavy. So your life is literally art.
Yeah.
And your art has brought you to amazing places.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much been a full circle moment from the second you were a kid till
up today.
Till today.
Right now at this point.
Yeah, literally. Because me and you.
Yeah.
Because me and you.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for a young artist?
Absolutely. And you probably gonna already know what I'm about to say, and that's remain creative.
Yes.
But first, number one, know who you are. How do you know who you are? Understand who your parents are, fall in love with your fate, and use your art to show the love for that. Do that in your sketchbook, right? Everybody don't have to see everything you do, but just have some stuff that you've done for yourself that nobody's ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have probably 5,000 pieces of artwork that nobody's ever seen from me. And if they saw it, they wouldn't even know I did it if I didn't sign my name on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a really good one. That's a really good one. It's like at some point there's a although we are given, we have to give to ourselves.
Got to give to the 30,000 ancestors that made us who we are.
Exactly.
And so there's some pieces that nobody's probably will never see from me unless my son decides that people will see it.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this leads me to my last question. If your art was music, what genre would it be?
I'm a musician. So you asked me that. It would probably a lot of it would be hip hop. You know, it would be because I was a rapper at one time, and I was trying to become a rap artist, and I call myself trying to get into production to try to produce my own music. And because I couldn't afford to get any equipment, I didn't really have a close relational connection to the instruments other than the things I learned from my friends who had their studios inside of their house. So, you know, I learned how to work on a 606 drum machine and all those other things. But then I decided to stop actually doing it because I remember going to the Gavin and I met NWA.
Oh, wow.
And I met Cleopatra and I met Shabba Ranks and I met all of these folks that came to San Francisco to Gavin back in the day. And for folks who know the Gavin know what I'm talking about. Like, you know, there was like the top artists at that time that would come and you would have these folks who are fishing for talent at this event. And if you was ever a rapper or ever won a contest, and I won quite a few contests rapping, you would be invited to this Gavin event. And I would come to it was right off of Harrison Street. I go to the Gavin event, and I never forget meeting Ice Cube, DJ Yella, MC Ren. Just, you know, Ice Cube. I mean, you know, Easy E. You know, Easy E was your height. You know what I mean? So it's just like meeting all of these guys. I was really expecting to meet some rich folks, you know, and they were rich in spirit. Like, bro, we still. I remember MC Ren was like, man, we struggling, man, but you know, keep doing your thing, that kind of thing. And I just kind of went back, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, man. You know, because these brothers were known all over the world. I know they work hard for what they do, and they got arrested for doing what they do. You know, and they were not on the street; they were actually making music and got arrested. You know, so, and I just remember not wanting my mother to have to come and see me in jail. That was really probably a big, big thing that led me because she was all I had. I didn't really have my father in my life. I never met my father actually. So, you know, last time I saw my dad saw me, I was probably like 1.5 years old. You know, so I would just always didn't want it to get back that I'm locked up in jail or something like that because we always had to go and see somebody in our family that was locked up. So I didn't want to be that. So I said, you know, I'm going to use my art to get where I got to go. You know what I mean? And I think my art, there's a reason. You know, I always had a spiritual foundation about me that came from my grandmother. And so I just always knew that there was a reason for my own personal existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you for taking time.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Talk to me.
Yeah.
Always a treat.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome. I can go on for days and days. Get the formula. Sparkle like a diamond. Hit the earth like a comet.
Together, man.
Yes, sir. We might need a part 2.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're gonna need a part 2.
There was so much more I really wanted to say. I'm like, dang, it's over already.
We're gonna need a part 2.
Yeah, we're gonna have to run that back.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff, bro.
A lot to unpack.
There's a whole lot to unpack, especially, about some of the works and why I created